This video might be a little controversial, but I'm gonna talk about this stuff anyways because it's going to benefit your guitar playing. In this video, I'm going to teach you the 5 big things that you're doing wrong when practicing. And these are basic fundamentals. I'm talking about practicing scales, triads, arpeggios, and more. I'm just so tired of seeing bad advice that is messing up your practice, causing you to not make improvements and just play things poorly. So the first one I want to look at is scales. Everyone always tells us, oh, let's practice our major scale, ascending and descending. Cool. I'm not going to say don't practice your major scales, but don't continue to practice it in this way. Once you've learned the notes here, you don't really get much more benefit out of just repeatedly practicing that scale. And the one thing that I want you guys to do that I learned from Dan Wilson is practice your descending scales differently. This is a big unlock that most people don't realize. When you start to get more advanced, you'll realize that not everything should be done the same way, ascending and descending. It's really easy for these kind of videos and most educational material. Let's just put the same material up and down, keeps it nice in position, looks good on paper, but that's not how these guys actually play this material. It's true for scales, arpeggios, and a bunch of other things that I'll show you in a minute. But instead of descending the same way, what I want you guys to do is this. So what's going on there? We're doing 2 or 4 notes per string. 2 notes, 4 notes, which lets us descend really quickly. 4 notes, 4 notes, and then our last note, resolving. And you should practice your major scales and any scale in this way, where you're actually descending the fretboard, not just descending in position. This is something that master guitarists are able to do, and that gives them control over the fretboard. They don't necessarily want to stay in this exact position, so they need the ability to descend in position, descending like that, and you could even descend while going up on the fretboard. But I'll say that for another lesson. This next one's gonna blow your mind. Most people will see some sort of recommendation of, okay, you do your scales up and down, but then start doing them in intervals. Why not thirds? And so on and so forth. So unless you're Bach or playing classical guitar, this kind of exercise is never used. It's something that, again, seems like it would be used and seems like a basic fundamental. Theoretically, we can see how that could be useful, but in the hundreds of solos I've analyzed for jazz, this type of thing is almost never done, at least like this. Instead, what you'll hear from these guys is a more bebop way of playing your thirds. I learned this from Pasquale Grasso, amazing bebop guitarist, so I think he knows what he's talking about. So what we're gonna do is we take our third and we just add a chromatic approach into it. Listen to how much better this sounds. You see how this actually starts to sound like music? And that's the big thing here that I have a problem with all of these exercises. When you see these things get recommended, ask yourself, is this actually used in solos and improvising in making music? Or is this just sort of an exercise that maybe sounds good to recommend? It's good advice, but it's really bad advice for making you a better musician. Everything you should be practicing, everything you do practice should be reflecting as close as possible the act of making music. And so we want to practice things that when they come out in our playing sound good, not practice things that then don't sound good when we try and use it. And this one is my biggest pet peeve for that. So if you guys want to see more on this bebop style thing with the thirds, let me know in the comments. I could do a whole lesson on this with what Pasquale Grasso had showed me, but we'll save that for another one. Next up is triads. You might know your 3 positions for triads with inversions, right? Let's take a C major triad. We have C here, and C here. Now, once you've done that, once you've played the chords for it, what you really should be doing is figuring out how to play those triads as single notes. And this is challenging on guitar. It's not very easy to play single note triads because the skips are very big, which causes us to do a lot of string skips. So if you're playing piano, this would be pretty easy. On guitar, it's actually hard. What I'll recommend is for each of these chord shapes, practice going up and then jump up to the next position and come down that position. So we ascend one position and come down the other. We can do that for the next one. Even this last one up here. The most common exercise that gets recommended is sometimes called the spider exercise. And you'll even hear top guitarists recommend this. I've talked about this before in other lessons, but you have to see what they actually do. And a lot of times you have to be careful because some of these expert guitarists will recommend something because they think that sounds good to say, but they never actually do that. And this one is sort of in that category. And my issue with it is it uses chromaticism in a way that is nonsense. This is the exercise. You would do something like this, like 4 notes per string in position, right? The reason this is nonsense is because the point of chromaticism is to target and lead to a certain note. When we play this, what note are we leading to? That jump of a whole step, because of the way the guitar functions, is not a target note. That might have been E, but we skip to F. And so you start to train your ear and your fingers to play things that aren't really targeting. It's like the musical equivalent of gibberish in speaking. And these 4 note per string chromatics are actually very important. You just don't want to do it in this way. There's a lick that I was learning from Doug Rainey, which I also talked about in a recent lesson, that I think illustrates really well ascending and descending chromaticism that works. Again, it works because it's leading your ear to a specific note. So this is the lick transposed to this key of C. When we're leading there, we get to that G. We hear our ear leading us to that G with that resolution. And then on the ascending side, you can hear it even without me playing it, right? So on the descending and ascending side, it's possible to use this chromaticism in a way that's effective, but not in the way you're used to seeing it. So how would you actually practice this? Well, we can build on what we just did with triads, and let's imagine this C triad right here. We can use this chromaticism to lead ourselves to each of these chord tones. And the way I recommend is starting on an upbeat so that your last note is the target note on a downbeat. So if we target C, if we target G, if we target E, and if we target C again, we get to that. You could even do it staying in position. It becomes a different 4 note pattern that I talked about in the last group of lessons. I'll link them all in the description. You can also do this on the ascending side. Again, we just do it so that the last note is our target note. So C, E, G, and then C again. Finally, let's talk about practicing arpeggios. Really, really important for any genre. And again, something that gets recommended in a way that is not useful to you for improvising and soloing, which is the context that we're dealing with here. And the exercise that I have an issue with is this diatonic arpeggios in sequence. So we go C major 7, D minor 7, E minor 7, F major 7, G7, etc. So my issue with this is it creates some artificial scenarios that you're not going to use when soloing. The two things that are issues is the first one is the fingering. It really can trip you up in fingering here. So I'm ending on this B with my ring finger, but ideally I would also start the next arpeggio, a D minor 7, with my ring finger. So I would make this weird awkward jump that's going to prevent me from playing this effectively. And that's just not how you would end up playing these arpeggios, assuming you wanted to play these two in sequence. So C major, and then I had to make this jump. This shape for D minor 7 is a really good shape for it. This is what we see Benson using all the time. I've talked about this in other lessons. Very comfortable to play, but not comfortable to play after C major 7 And you're not going to find Benson playing that after C major 7 arpeggio, because certain arpeggios diatonic to whatever key we're in get grouped. Again, I've talked about this in a not controversial lesson called The Secret of the Two Chords, where we would have C major, E minor, and A minor grouped together, D minor, G7, and B minor 7 flat 5 grouped together. Those arpeggios should be practiced together, because when we're soloing, we use them in sequence. We don't use C major 7 going into D minor 7 that often at all. So practicing in this way, again, creates an artificial scenario that you're not going to use. How should we practice arpeggios then? Let me show you. The first one is we can do it in position for 2 octaves. That's really useful. So C major 7 in position. I'm keeping it all here in this position. After that, you can do 2 octaves with an extended position. You see how I'm extending up to the 12th fret? This one gets used more often than the one in position. I'll just let you know. Then we can use different positions for these arpeggios, starting on the E string or starting on the A string. So we did the E string. Let's start on the A string. Do the same thing, in position or extended. In position, we reach for that B. Extended, we still end on the same B, but we switched to the 5th position here. Okay, then from there, we could start practicing these other arpeggios that work over C major. For a major 7 chord, that's going to be the 6th chord, A minor 7, and the 3 chord, E minor 7. Do the same thing for those. You could have your extended for A minor 7 on the E string, and then on the A string. And we can do that as well for E minor 7. So let's do it on the E string first. A lot of times you won't even use your pinky for these arpeggios. Just use the 3rd finger and then slide up. And then on the E string. So all of those arpeggios would work over C major. There's a lot more you could do here with linking these different arpeggios. I talked about it in that lesson. It's a lot of information here. If you guys want to learn how to actually practice this stuff and learn how to use this in soloing and when learning standards, you got to join Chase's Guitar Academy. I have a ton of courses. I work with you directly one-on-one. You get my personal feedback on your playing and just guarantee that you actually succeed in learning guitar. If that's interesting to you, 14-day free trial in the links below. So let's play one big line that connects all of these different ideas that we've done. So starting with thirds, arpeggios, chromaticism, triads, descending scales. So all of those things are worth practicing. Hopefully I see you guys in Chase's Guitar Academy. Just give it a try. No risk to you, money back guaranteed, all of that stuff. So I'll see you guys in the next lesson. Please don't let me see you play these. Goddamn. Please. I'm begging you.